Hello, John Phillips here with Mansfield University Computer Science Department. In this video, we're going to take a look at working on our Ubuntu LAMP server that we set up and experimenting a little bit with MySQL, or MySQL if you prefer that pronunciation. And SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and MySQL is a popular open source implementation of that. Okay, so get your server running here on AWS. I have mine up and running now. Grab your IP address if you need to. And what we're going to do is open PuTTY, which you can download if you don't have it. And I've already covered how to do the settings in previous videos, so you can just load in your existing settings if you want and paste in your, grab your IP address and paste that in and save that if you want, and then open. Alright, so you could log in as the Ubuntu user, but for this experimenting with the MySQL as a user, we'll just log in as the JDO user that we created. And your password. Okay, there we go. And logged in now. And before we start working with MySQL, it can be useful to find out what version we're working with. And so the command is MySQL -- version. And actually the number we want is this one here, the distribution 5.7. And so what we can do is go do a Google search on MySQL 5.7 manual, and it comes up at this page. Tells you a little bit about MySQL. And you have a tutorial, and you have all sorts of documentation here that you can read through. Well, the pages that we're mostly interested in will probably be the data types page to see what kind of data we can have in MySQL. It has quite a few more types than what you would have in other languages like Java. So you have to decide what types you want to use. It has a lot of different functions that you can make use of in your various commands. We won't cover that right now though, but just be aware that they're there. Say if you want to do something with strings or something with dates, you can come look at the manual in those sections. It tells you about the SQL statement syntax. You have data definition statements. And the main one we're going to look at here is create database. And then if you want to get rid of your database when you're done experimenting, there's drop database. So those are pretty much the two we're going to look at, but there's quite a few other commands there. And then the other type of command we're going to look at in this video is data manipulation statements. And there'll be 4 different commands here. And there's an acronym for these, CRUD, but the words are slightly different. CRUD stands for create, retrieve, update, and delete. And so to create a new record, like a new row in your database, that is the insert command. And the R retrieve, that is the select command. And update is the update command, and delete is the delete command. So that's where we're going to be looking at how to use those commands. All right, so that's what we're working with. Let's go ahead back to PuTTY and our Ubuntu Linux server that we're logged into. And let's see, do an ls to see what we have. We have a couple folders. Let's make a new directory called SQL. You don't have to do this. You can put these commands anywhere. But I'll make that directory. I'll change into that directory. And if I say pwd to print where I'm at, I'm in my home directory in the SQL folder. And I like when I use SQL, when I create a new table, I like to document that and then use those commands to actually create the table. You don't have to do it this way, but it can be, I think, a good way to go. It's the way I usually do it. So what we're going to do is use one of our text editors, either Nano or Vim. I'll go ahead and use Vim to create a new SQL file. I'll call it emp.sql, stands for employee, because this table will represent employees. Okay, so we'll put that in there, and in Vim, if that's what you're using, hit I to get in the insert mode. Use JDO. And then we'll say drop table if exists. And I'll just name the table because I'm lazy typing. I'll name it EMP. But you can spell out employee if you'd like to. Now the main command to use here is create table. And the name of your table is EMP, or whatever you put above. And this time, instead of a semicolon, because this isn't the end of the command, there'll be several lines, we'll put a starting parenthesis. And then the first thing I want in my table is the employee's ID. So I'll just say ID. This will be an integer, and we could put a comma and leave it just like that. Then we could have a last name. You know, we could have a last name and a first name, but just to make this a little shorter, let me just say name. So just note that if you were doing this for real, you would probably have both a last and a first name fields. Okay, so you could just put a comma there and go down to the next field. And the final field I'm going to have is salary. And this one I could make double. There's a better type to use in SQL called decimal or numeric. So you have lots of options here, but I'm just going to go ahead, since most of you are probably familiar with Java, and just leave it double. And then finally you need a primary key, and I'm going to make that the ID field. So primary key should be one of your fields that we're defining here that does not ever have any duplicates, that can uniquely identify any row of data. Okay, and then we'll end with a parenthesis and a semicolon. And I'm going to modify this just a little bit. Okay, so normally when you do this ID field and it's an integer, you might note that for IDs you would never have any negative numbers, and so you can add an option on here, unsigned, and then it'll only store non-negative integers in this field. Another option that's frequently added, almost always added, is not null, meaning that this field, when you create a new row, a new record, it has to have a value, so it cannot be null. And then another thing that you may or may not want to have is this optional field called auto_increment. Now the problem with this particular field is it's different for most different databases. For example, in SQLite, it's just auto-increment with no underscore, I believe. And then other databases, Oracle, SQL Server, different databases do it differently than this. So anyway, for MySQL, it's auto_increment. We could do the same thing with these other fields. Now varchar stands for variable character. The number in the parentheses is the most characters you think you would ever have. If you think 30 is too low, you could change this, to 40 or 50. So we want 50 there. And so you can make that the biggest size you think you would ever have. Okay, but like the field above, we can also add not null if we want to make sure there's always a name when we create a record. And then for salary, double, and we could add not null or not. You can just leave it without that. And then primary key is good the way it is. Okay, now another thing I often add when I'm just experimenting with the database, because in a production database you probably don't want the drop table command, because that command will wipe out and erase all of your data when each time this is run. But for experimenting, and if you're going to modify this table, make lots of changes, then that command is handy. So that's why I have it in there. Also for experimenting, another set of commands you might want to put in here are insert commands. So you can say insert into EMP, the name of the table, and then you can list all of your fields if you want. Or if you're going to go ahead and give data for all those fields, you don't actually have to list them. And you can just put values for the ID. You could put null, and it'll automatically insert the next available integer. For the name, let's do Jane for Jane Doe here. And for salary, some sort of number for the Jane Doe's salary. And you could have optional cents if you want to there for your double. Okay, so good. So there's one employee. Let's add a couple more. So I'm going to hit escape to get out of my insert mode. I'm going to hit YY, and then I'm going to hit to yank that into the buffer, and then I'm going to hit P to paste a couple of times. And let's just change a few of these. So I'll go over the J of Jane and hit DW to delete word, and then I for insert. And maybe this will be Bob, and maybe Bob's salary. Maybe we'll make that 45,000. And then one more person, I'll just back over them. Maybe this will be Sue, and maybe Sue has a salary of 75,000 and 23 cents. Okay, so just give us a little bit of sample data. So every time we delete this database, drop this table, and recreate it, we'll have some starting data to look at. All right, so escape WQ to write and quit using Vim, and then hit enter. All right, and then now, let's see what we have. So there's what we've created. So now we need to get into the MySQL query tool. To do that, MySQL-P. So I'm logged in as user JDoe, and the password JDoe has I changed for the Linux login. But for the MySQL login, I haven't changed it. And our script that we ran when we created this server, we set the password to be MUCIS. And so that's what I typed for the password. So JDoe, password MUCIS. All right, and now I see a MySQL prompt here on the screen. And I could say show databases. And I see there's a JDoe database, and then typically you say use JDoe. We don't actually have to do that this particular time, but I'll go ahead and do it. And then show tables. And most of your commands end with the semicolon. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but usually try to end with the semicolon. And there we see that in our SQL creation script, it created an address table for JDoe. Now what we want to do is take that creation script we had written and create the employee table. So how do you do that? Well, you need to make sure when you start MySQL running, you're in the directory that has that set of commands, the emp.sql file. And we were. And so now all you have to do is say source and then the name of that file, emp.sql. Now this is one of many ways to do this, but this is my favorite way because all of those commands that we just used to create this table, they're documented in that .sql file. All right, so we didn't get any errors, and that's good. If we got some sort of error, then we would want to go back and quit this right here. We type quit, semicolon, and then we'd go vim emp.sql. We try to go down and find where the error is. Maybe we left off a parenthesis or a comma or spelled something wrong, and we'd fix it. But this looks like it ran just fine. So now I could say show tables again, and we see there's an EMP table. So another command in MySQL that you have is describe the name of any table. And there I see, there's what we just, my create table command, that's what it gives us. All right, and then one more command, we put that sample data in there, and that is our select statement. So to get everything out real quick, to see everything in our EMP table, we say select asterisk from the name of the table, EMP, semicolon, and that'll show us all the data currently in our table. Well, let's add some more data. Now that's the C of CRUD, create a new row, and the actual command in SQL is insert. So we'd say insert into EMP, and then a lot of times you list your field names, but you don't have to, but we could go ID, comma name, comma salary, values, parenthesis, and then we can give values. Now, since the ID is auto increment, we would use none. If you didn't make it auto increment and gave it just int, then you'd have to put a number in here. Okay, the name, well, that's a varchar, which is a string basically. You put that in quote marks. And so put your own name in. I'll put my name in. And then the salary, give yourself a salary. Maybe I'm making 46,000. And you don't have to put on the, oops, you can see my keyboard a little better here. All right, so we could put a semicolon there and enter, and oh no. So if you do something wrong, it gives you the message that you have a SQL syntax error. And so there was something about this it didn't like, and so it said, okay, there was an error near ID name salary. So I did something wrong there. You can hit the up arrow key to see, and you can hit it several times to go through previous commands. So maybe I needed parentheses around these guys. I don't normally type this in directly, but let's see if that fixes things. And I just added those parentheses, hit enter, and now it seemed to work fine. So we'll hit the up arrow key a couple of times to get back to select and enter, and there I see, yep, it's in there. And that looks good. Now your select command has all sorts of options. Let me just show you a couple of them. You can choose just a few fields. Say you only wanted name and salary from EMP, semicolon. Just hit the semicolon and enter if you forget it. And that no longer shows the ID, it just shows the name and the salary. Let's see, maybe you want these sorted by salary. Okay, so how would you do that? So let me just go ahead and select everything, which is the asterisk from EMP, order by salary, semicolon. And now everything's in ascending order by salary. You could order by name if you want to, order by ID. What about, what if we want the salary to be in descending order, so the highest salaries are at the top? You could say order by salary, and then DESC, that stands for descending. All right, so the highest salary is at the top. What if you want to break any ties? Now we don't have any ties in the salary there, but what if you did? You could then do comma and then name, for example. So that would sort by salary descending, but if two people had the same salary, then it would subsort by the name. What if you only want to see the names of people who are making $50,000 or more? So if we only want to see the names, we'd say select name from EMP where. So we have this where clause, where salary is greater than or equal to 50,000. And then we saw just Jane and Sue have those salaries. All right, well, there's all sorts of commands or things you can do with the select query, and you'll learn about that in a database course, most likely. So I already demonstrated the insert command, the select command. I now want to demonstrate the update command, and then we'll do the delete command. Okay, so select asterisk from EMP. So there's our data. And now let's say we want to update everybody's salary by 10%. That would be a nice raise. So how would you do that? Update, and then the table name. Set is the other part of the command. Set, and then you give it a column name. And you could do multiple columns, but we only have this one that we can really update this way. Column equals, and then we're going to give it a value. And the value, let's try this. Not sure this will work, but let's see if it does. Salary times 1.1. That would be 100% plus 10% basically for each salary. Let's see what this does. Okay, so it didn't give me any errors. Let's see what everybody has. Wow, so everybody now has a much higher salary. We could check to see if that's 10%, but it looks like it is. And then notice, since it's a double, you know, the way it's rounding some things off might not be just like we'd like. So if we instead use that decimal data type or a numeric data type, it keeps a fixed width just exactly right. So that data type might be a better way to go. Anyway, we now have that updated. What if we just now want to give one person an extra bonus? Okay, so say we want to just update John. We'd say salary, and you know, maybe I get a whole new salary. So you could do something like this: salary equals 55,000. And you can say, you got to be careful. If you just ended it right there, that would give everybody a salary of 55,000. So we need to make it John only. So you use a where clause for that. Where name equal John. But what if you had several people named John? Then all of them would get that salary. So how can you guarantee you're only updating a certain row? We'll use the ID. So where ID equals 4. And then we're guaranteed only that row will be changed. And then we'll see what it's set to, and it changed to 55,000. So great. So now the final command I want to give is the delete. Delete from EMP where ID equal 4. So let's just delete John. You have all sorts of options here though. You know, you could say where name like, and then use a wildcard, %, perhaps, I think it is. Let's say it begins with a J followed by anything, would be that. And so that would delete every Jane and John from this particular table. But more often than not, you'll do something like where ID equals a certain number, just delete a single record. So where ID equal 4, let's delete John and do our select again, and we see John is gone. So we've done the select, the insert, the update, and the delete. So those are our main commands for manipulating data in our database. And then if I say show tables, we see we have those two tables. So I could drop the table. So I could say drop EMP. Okay, maybe I can't drop. Let's try this again. Drop table EMP. There we go. Drop table EMP does it. And if I do show tables again, now EMP is gone. But we know how to recreate it, right? We can just say source emp.sql, the name of the file that contains the create table commands. And it reruns those commands, and now I can say select asterisk from EMP, and I'm back to having just my sample data that I started with. And to get out of this query tool, you could use quit. Now, there's some other handy tools that I'm not going to go into right now, but I just wanted to show you real quick. There's one from MySQL Workbench. And you can install this, I know on Windows machines, but I think also on Linux machines, maybe on OS 10. Yep, it has it for all three. And this gives you kind of a GUI interface to working with your database and doing your SQL commands and whatnot, and designing a multi-table type database. So all sorts of cool stuff that's available for free for working with MySQL. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.